The TikTok singer and songwriter who was arrested and charged for the horrific crimes against a 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez recently finished his 5-day preliminary trial. And I guess you could say, just when we thought the story couldn't get any worse, yeah, way more disturbing evidence came out. So I don't think it's a shocker to say it's not looking good for the 21-year-old singer and songwriter who I guess retired himself early. I mean, it is pretty much safe to say the dude's life as he knows it is over. And this is just such a disgusting tragedy, such an avoidable tragedy. It's a tragedy all around. I mean, David went from the height of his career to possibly facing life behind bars, or actually a lethal injection, all within roughly a year. And obviously that's nothing compared to the fact that a young girl tragically lost her life because I guess he thought that might protect him. Was he the dumbest criminal alive? I don't know, but regardless, it seems like he's ended his career and potentially his life as well, all because of his disgusting actions. And this case has already been insanely dark and hard to cover just because of the circumstances and just Celeste being so young, but it also just really continues to get worse. You guys probably remember this news coming out roughly a year ago. I covered it twice when, everything first came out and then when he was finally arrested. And since then, obviously there's been a whole bunch of updates, and honestly, it is just all downhill from essentially when we found out about the story. And unfortunately, things just got so much darker as the evidence was presented and testimonies were given. But just in case you don't know what's been going on in this case, I will give you a quick recap to get you guys up to date. So everything started last September when workers in a Los Angeles tow yard noticed a foul smell coming from an abandoned Tesla that had been parked in that lot for a few months. And of course, we now know that car belonged to the popular music artist and TikToker David, who also just so happened to be on tour during the discovery of this horrific scene. So when authorities arrived to this tow yard and searched the car, they unfortunately found human remains in the trunk, and it was clear that they had been there for a while. And it only took a couple of days for the remains from the car to be identified as the missing 14-year-old girl, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And at first, David tried to ignore the headlines that his Tesla had just been used in this horrific crime scene, but he did cancel his world tour and immediately started laying low. So fans then wanted to believe that it was a terrible coincidence, but it didn't take long at all for the public to dig up a whole bunch of photos, clips, and Discord messages from the past that seemed to link David to the missing girl Celeste. And we're talking about things like him joking about having a baby with her in a Discord server, or clips from her old live stream making comments about their not only troubling but illegal age gap, and also not to mention she apparently had a matching tattoo with David on her finger. Yeah, it wasn't looking good, and it keeps getting worse because all of this evidence made it very much seem like it was very possible that David could have had a romantic relationship with Celeste, despite him being 20 and her being 13 to 14. And this theory also gave him a pretty good motive, considering, his career would be over right as it started if it came out that he was actually dating a child. Even worse, if he got that child pregnant. But regardless, like I said, fans didn't want to believe that he could actually be responsible for this. But I mean, no one could really argue that his creative direction was also pretty alarming because, his biggest hits were titled things like Romantic Homicide, and the music videos depicted someone being, taken out and thrown into a trunk. And it also started to seem like he was leaving some clues and wanted people to point fingers. I mean, which leaves you with so many questions. Everything about this story leaves you with why? Why would you ever do this? Why would you ever do this to someone? And if you're actually a psychopath, you clearly have to be a psychopath to do something like that. But also, if you are a psychopath, why would you do that to yourself? All of it just doesn't make sense. Then on top of everything, why does he leave breadcrumb trails? Or actually, this wasn't even breadcrumb trails. Why does he leave red tape that just leads straight up to him? All of it is just so disgusting and stupid. And it's kind of like, what did he expect? A congratulations bozo? He achieved something that very few can actually achieve, and then he threw it all away. And the general public absolutely believed he was responsible, even becoming enraged at authorities for not taking him in immediately. And it took a few months before anyone was actually arrested, and people were worried that this was going to get swept out on a rug somehow due to, I guess, David's fame. But in April of 2026, David was finally arrested and charged in connection with the murder of Celeste. And his former charges were first-degree murder, lewd and lascivious acts with an individual under 14 and mutilating the remains of a body. So the LA District Attorney, Nathan Hochman, allegedly said that David had a long-term relationship with an underage girl while he was an adult, and he took her life to protect his career. So it seems like that the detectives agreed with the motive that the internet kind of concluded on as well. And I guess after all of this time had passed, it seems like finally someone was going to do something about this and the dude would be held responsible. But for a few months following this, David's preliminary hearing kept getting pushed back due to how much evidence there was in this case. Then finally, on July 21st, the preliminary hearing was set to begin, and the trial attracted so much public attention that the court held a public lottery for seats at the hearing. And content creators like Trappler Ross and Sloan managed to actually win some seats, and they were able to provide live updates during the breaks. So I'll include some clips and information from them alongside of the information presented online.
Okay, guys, so I was one of the 10 people that were allowed to go into the courthouse, and we've seen some pretty disturbing things so far.
So the trial started, and day after day, more and more stomach-churning details just kept on getting presented. And the picture that all of this evidence painted was absolutely not good whatsoever. It didn't look good for David. So not that anyone was really on his side at this point, but ugh. So according to the LA County District Attorney's Office, during a 5-day preliminary hearing, the prosecutors laid out the framework of their case against David. Some of the new information that came out states that Celeste apparently went to David's Hollywood Hills home on April 23rd, 2025, and was never seen again. Then apparently the very next day, David is accused of ordering a shovel to his home. And then over the next few days, using an alias, David allegedly also ordered 3 chainsaws, a body bag, and a blue inflatable pool. Yeah, and if that doesn't give you chills after we now know that his alleged underage lover went missing, I don't know. And forgive me for how graphic this is, but it's important that we acknowledge how dark this crime was. So prosecutors allege that David stabbed Celeste and then placed her body in the inflatable pool and used a chainsaw to dismember her before he placed her in the trunk. Yeah, it's just crazy to think how happy little dancing TikToker is literally the worst of human beings, if this is true. You know, he hasn't been sentenced by a court of law yet, so allegedly, but it's definitely not looking good for him. And their evidence for this is partially the blood found in David's garage, as well as the small blue plastic fragments, apparently from the pool, that were embedded in the victim's remains found inside of the Tesla.
Let's just start off with the pool. So yesterday I told you guys that we didn't have any information about the pool. Well, today we did. So the blue inflatable pool that was supposedly blown up and put in the garage, and David unalived Celeste there to collect the blood, it was found. Let's just talk about the garage in general. So there were stains all around. There were stains near this like kind of gym area. There were also cuts inside of the floor mat. So imagine like a garage with brick flooring and black mats all on top of it. So they found stains all over the mats, and they found signs of blood, but then they pulled up the flooring, and there was so much blood that was like stained on the floor of the bricks. You could tell that a crime was committed there.
Yeah. This is definitely one of the heavier topics I cover here on this channel, but since I guess it is like one of the craziest things that's happened, especially in the influencer sphere, which is the sphere that I mostly cover, just like, you know, shocking online content is kind of the niche that we cover here. And yeah, it's safe to say that's probably one of the most shocking ones that we've covered. And this guy was a big socialite and had a whole bunch of celebrity friends. But Sloan also talks about the blue pieces being shown in the evidence photos of the body as well.
We saw pictures of her body. There was a photograph of her knee at one point, like her knee cap, and it had all of these like blue pieces of plastic in it from the chainsaw. I also saw her body in the Tesla with her head and her arms cut off. It was so graphic, and it's really upsetting.
And as for the motive being presented, prosecutors actually made a claim very similar to what many viewers assumed based on what they found themselves. Prosecutors stated that David had a lucrative career that he wanted to protect, and that he had received text messages from Celeste in the days leading up to her passing where she threatened to expose David and destroy his career. And all signs currently point to David panicking at these threats and taking the life of a young girl and then dumping her body in a car on the side of the road. And I guess just hoping that it would all go away. All of this is just so confusing as well, because like he did all this and then just left the car to be towed. Like, clearly he's not very smart. Because every step of this whole story is just like, how can you be this stupid, man? But also, I mean, we're not really complaining that this vile individual is stupid, because at least he was caught. So again, he did all this so he wouldn't lose his $1 million record deal or whatever.
I don't know if it's Louis or Louis Bloom. He worked at Interscope, or he's really high up at Interscope, and he spoke about like handling the contracts and ultimately terminating David. I still don't really understand why he took the stand, unless it was to prove how much money David has made, because they did talk about how much he could have made at Interscope, which could have been like over $20 million. Thank God.
What a vile human being. But yeah, now a Superior Court judge has ordered that he has to stand trial for this, meaning the case is going forward and the district attorney thinks that they actually have a good shot at winning.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Hockman. I'm the Los Angeles County District Attorney. Today I am here to announce that Judge Charlene Olmedo held David Anthony Burke, who goes by the name of a singer David spelled D4VT, to answer for the horrific and barbaric killing of a 14-year-old at the time, Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She has held him to answer for first-degree murder with the special circumstances of lying in wait, doing this crime for financial gain, and a witness to an investigation.
So, Los Angeles County District Attorney Nathan J. Hochman said, "What was presented by our office over the course of the last week is a small but illustrative fraction of the evidence investigators have accumulated that proves defendant Burke is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of the brutal murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And if convicted as charged, David faces life in state prison without the possibility of parole, but he also has to deal with the possibility of a death penalty, which in California would be a lethal injection."
At this point, again, we don't have the one additional consideration is that Mr. Burke now is eligible for death penalty. The death penalty considerations are now being weighed.
And the DA's office says that the decision whether to seek the death penalty will be made later on, but isn't off the table. Right now, David is scheduled to return in court on August 31st for a post-preliminary arraignment. And this is apparently where we'll likely get his new trial dates, along with a new plea from him. Previously, he's pleaded not guilty, so it'll definitely be interesting to see if he changes his tune this time around. And all we can really hope for is that there is some justice found for Celeste and her family. Again, I don't normally cover stories this dark, but I do feel like it's important that her story is heard. And I'll follow up on the story when we have some more updates, but until then, I'll see you guys next video. Peace.